the Los Angeles Lakers, because if there has been one move that has been talked about throughout the entirety of the season in terms of the trade deadline, it is this insufferable Buddy Hield, Miles Turner to the Los Angeles Lakers rumor. And I don't know about you. Like, I feel like that kind of feels dead to me. What about you?
It has to be, right? I mean, okay, so if let's put our general manager hats on. So if we're managing Indiana and we've got all of the backcourt talent that we have, almost a plethora, like, man, like we haven't even talked about how Buddy Hield's in that backcourt. We haven't even talked about how TJ McConnell's in that backcourt. Like, chances are they could move a couple of those guys and stay with their timeline. But like, what would be the perfect center to have be, the foundational front court piece for your like this developmental period for your young guards? How about the one that can block shots and make threes, like that, and can score the basketball a little bit, attacking closeouts and things along those lines? Like, he's kind of perfect, Miles Turner is, for what they're trying to do here in the future. I haven't seen the numbers thrown around, but I would imagine they could get him relatively affordably. Like, I would think if I was Miles Turner, I'd be jumping for joy if I could get 20 million per, right? So like, it's one of those things where I think that is dead. What makes it so unfortunate is it wasn't just alive before the season. I think Indiana wanted to do it. And I think it was Rob and Jeannie who pulled away from that situation over the 2 picks, which is a whole other separate conversation. But I do think you're right. I think that Indiana deal is probably off the table at this point.
Well, on top of it, like, Adrian Wojnarowski like reported about this, right? Like, and when Woj speaks, like, you feel like there's probably something there in terms of like the extension window being pretty real for the Pacers. The other part of it is the Pacers have a crazy amount of cap space, which means they could actually set up the Miles Turner contract in a way that is very beneficial to them, while also setting it up long-term for them where they're paying him a little bit less than other teams would have to if they were to sign him.
Like front-loaded?
You could give him a balloon payment almost this year. Basically, you could give him like $8 or $9 million more this year, and then set the contract like descending where maybe it's like a $100 million contract from 2023-24 until the next 4 years out. But you can offer him $8 million more this year, which gives him very real incentive to sign because he's getting an $8 million balloon payment. So I just really think that there's a lot of synergy there in terms of capability to make this work. If you're the Indiana Pacers and you're Miles Turner and you're trying to figure out how to keep this thing going, especially when they're 20-17 and they have this thing going in like a really exciting way, like a really fun style of basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, and they compete, and like even during the stretches of the year where things have gotten rough, they haven't ever like gone like through extended stretches where they're not competing. Like they've got like a really good basketball character, if that makes sense.
Well, they play super unselfishly. Like, I was looking at numbers for rookie rankings, which I have coming this week. People of the show, go to The Athletic, subscribe there. theathletic.com/game theory is a good link to use to subscribe to The Athletic. But they're actually second in the NBA right now in passes per game. And they're second in the NBA right now in terms of, if I remember correctly, potential assists per game. Some of their shooters have been a little bit off over the course of the last 2 months, really. Ben Mathurin, I think, is shooting like 19% in his last 19 games from three or something crazy. Yeah, it was due to fall off a cliff a little bit at some point. But, they just really move the ball. They play super unselfishly. And obviously it's Tyrese Halliburton at the top of the snake that's like really kind of keeping this thing together. But more than that, like, Andrew Nembhard is super unselfish. Chris Duarte keeps the ball moving when he's out there. Like, they just have a lot of guys that are all about keeping everything moving, unselfish basketball, and they're super fun to watch because of it. But because of that, I think that they are not likely to end up selling really at the deadline. I think that it's kind of hard to pinpoint who the seller is for the Lakers, which makes this conversation very difficult. So let's start here. If you were the Lakers, would you be trying to buy and make an all-in move, or would you be trying to set yourself up for this summer in order to potentially make a star trade? Like, they will have multiple picks that they can move in such a deal. They'll have real flexibility in terms of the cap because the Russell Westbrook deal comes off. There's a lot of things that they could really make intriguing by waiting. but like then you're wasting a year of LeBron James, you're wasting a year of Anthony Davis. What would you do if you were in charge of the Los Angeles Lakers? Do you think that this core is worth investing in and trying to help?
So, because it's the Los Angeles Lakers, and all they really have to do is demonstrate a brief window of competence to restore faith in the young basketball players of the world that would love to play for them, I would go all in on this LeBron James window. Mainly just because I'm more of a title or bust kind of guy. And from that standpoint, we just know by looking throughout NBA history that in order to win at the highest levels, you don't just need a star, you need one of the stars, like one of the preeminent guys in the league. And, with this, I think LeBron's a little under the radar right now. Last 18 games, 31, 8-7. They're like plus 80 something when he's on the floor, minus 80 something when he's off the floor. He's averaging like 34 since AD went out on 58% shooting. And they're winning all his shifts. That's the important detail. So he's playing at an extremely high level right now with some pretty iffy talent. If you're looking at the degree of difficulty of what he's pulling off, I mean, there's not a guy on the roster who's over 6'5" that can dribble, not named LeBron, because of the Anthony Davis injury. That's the lack of talent that they're working with there. So many of their lineups are 3-guard lineups, 4-guard lineups. They're playing Charlotte tonight. Guess what? Charlotte's going to get 15 offensive rebounds or more that game just because of their wings jumping over the top of their players. In that game that they lost back at Staples Center, it was just Mason Plumlee getting boxed out by, Dennis Schroeder down the stretch of the game. It's just, they have so many fundamental personnel weaknesses. But I am a big believer in slotting. And I do think that when you start to put guys in proper roles, things would kind of even out. And so I am a big believer that a couple of moves on the periphery, especially that just for starters, give LeBron a fighting chance during this at AD. But then when AD comes back, everything into place, that's where the slotting becomes a factor. I'd be looking at Kyle Kuzma from the Washington Wizards. I thought he was awesome with LA the last time, but he directly addresses that perimeter size issue that the Lakers have dealt with a bunch this year. He's really good as a wing crasher on the defensive glass. He also had a natural cutting chemistry with LeBron. He's got that little pop shot floater in the mid-range too, which is so vital in tight space environments to score as a cutter. He'd be a guy I'd have my eye on. I still like Bojan Bogdanovic. I even think a lot of these guys in Utah on the periphery, as stupid as it sounds, but a second-round pick and Patrick Beverley for Rudy Gay. Just get a guy who's 6'8" who could put the ball on the floor. Maybe that would help a little bit, and that would be a less aggressive move that would save their assets for after the season. I just would like to see them do something, because at the end of the day, if LeBron's going to play this good, and if Anthony Davis is going to at some point in the next 2 months return to the level that he was at before the injury, they're 4.5 games back of the 6th seed to get out of the play-in. So it's not even with as bad as it's been, that it's a disaster. Give them a fighting chance. That's literally all I ask, is just give them a fighting chance.
I tend to agree with you. When I watch the Lakers, they fight, they scratch, they claw. This team actually wants to be competitive. Every single time you watch them, you're just this team really, really wants to compete right now. They fight, they have close games, they play everyone super close. It feels sometimes they're down 20. No 20-point lead in Lakers games is safe, it feels either way.
Either way.
If they're up 20, if they're up 20, it feels like things can come back down to earth. If they're down 20, they're going to get super aggressive defensively and try and push it back and make it a tight game at the end. Everything is going to be a super tight game, and I just feel like the name Kyle Kuzma is the one that I keep coming back to as well. He has been awesome this year, first and foremost, as a legit shot creator who can get to that little push shot in the mid-range, who can knock down threes. He's actually become a fairly sizable volume 3-point shooter who is confident and comfortable knocking down shots. I think he's shooting 34-35% from three, but you actually kind of have to close out on him in a pretty real way. You have to pay substantial attention to him when he has the ball, because he is so creative and because he has gotten quite a bit better, in my opinion, as a passer and playmaker. You look at those years with the Lakers, it was 1.5 assists, 1.9 assists, 2.5 assists. He's averaging 4 assists per game now with the Washington Wizards. He makes the right passing reads at a really, really high level. The other thing about Kyle Kuzma is we know that dude loves LA.
Hell yeah, he does.
We know that guy would not mind living the rest of his career in LA. which means I think that they can actually move one of those 2 first-round picks for him, one of the 2027 or 2029 firsts, and feel confident and comfortable that there's going to be like real return on investment, not just this year, but long-term, because you get his bird rights moving forward. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of move that like just makes a lot of sense to me. And on top of it, you don't have to move the Russell Westbrook contract to be able to do that. Patrick Beverley's deal actually lines up very, very well within such a deal. Like, are the Wizards going to do better than like unprotected 2027 or maybe like top 2 protected 2027 first round pick and an expiring deal for Kyle Kuzma? I'm not convinced they do. Are you?
No. And let's be clear. Let's put our GM hats on again. Let's pretend we're in Indiana and we're evaluating the value of picks. Is there a pick that I would want more than one that Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka's competence directly relates to the outcome of that pick? Like, I'm sorry, but like, and with LeBron's age, like it's just one of those things where I'm with you. I think there's a lot of value in those 2 particular picks, which is what's so particularly frustrating about the situation is they straight up have the means with which to give reinforcements to this group. I'm glad you brought up the spot up shooting piece with Kuzma, because I do not care about 3-point percentages as it pertains to spot up guys, as long as they're not off the map. Like, yeah, if the dude's in the 20s, that's an issue. Just ask Russell Westbrook. But like, it's so much more about whether or not the team is guarding you, because in the type of volume that you're getting from spot up shooting, whether it's 4 or 5 shot attempts a game, one more make here, one more miss there could swing a percentage a little bit. But really, it's like, I don't care if you're shooting 38% on wide open threes that no one's guarding you. Kyle Kuzma is an aggressive spot up player. He thinks up here that he's a lights out spot up shooter, and teams guard him like that. They chase him off the line. They're scared of him when he shoots. It's to me that matters. The reputation matters more than the actual 3-point percentage. I think he immediately solves so many specific problems with that Lakers group. He is such a natural fit with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, that's the one that really lines up to me, like across the board. I mean, like speaking of just like having that confidence, and part of it's confidence, right? Like Austin Reeves is a good shooter. I don't think he's a hyper elite shooter by any stretch of the imagination. He's made 36% of his threes this year. He made 31 last year. His last 2 years at Oklahoma, he was like in the low 30s because he took a ton of pull-up shots. Like his shot quality there
different
was
shot profile, yeah.
Yeah, totally different shot profile. But at the same token, he's just confident as shit. Like that dude feels like it's going in every time. And because he is such a capable processor of basketball, you do have to close out on him, because if not, he's going to find the open man. He's going to find the open spot. He's going to find the open gap and be able to drive and put pressure on your defense. And it's the same with Kyle Kuzma. That ability to actually just make plays with the ball in your hand, it's really, really critical. I mean, the guy that I've been looking at for a while is Eric Gordon, but like I feel like the salary number is a little bit too high if they're going to go out and they're going to try and get a Kyle Kuzma type. Like the thing that I was trying to figure out, is there like a 3-team deal where you send Russell Westbrook to a team with cap space like San Antonio, and then you essentially use their cap space to like filter Eric Gordon with a second person over to the Los Angeles Lakers. Like that would be an interesting name for me, because he's tough. He is physical. He can knock down shots. He can play with the ball in his hands. That's what I'd be looking for. Guys that maybe in Eric Gordon's case play bigger than 6'3", 6'4", or guys that are 6'5" to 6'9" in Kyle Kuzma's case, and can do a lot of different things with the ball, not just be a shooter, although shooting is paramount. They do need someone that can be a confident shooter. You just need 35. You don't need, a sniper. You don't need 42% from 3 at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like Eric Gordon's game, and I think he'd fit really well. And he does play bigger than his size as it pertains to, isolation defense and just his overall physicality, his ability to box out. Where I'm specifically concerned for the Lakers is crashing from the perimeter in defensive rebounding situations. And that's where getting a guy with real height and length, I think, is so vital. The Lakers are they've lost multiple games in crunch time situations this year because of an inability to secure defensive rebounds. Basically, these battles that are taking place on the perimeter between guys like a Patrick Beverley, Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, Lonnie Walker, they're losing too many of those particular battles in long rebound situations. And so even though I like Eric Gordon, I like the way you kind of functionally broke down how they could do that with the Spurs. I'd be more interested in it if that second player was over 6'7", because it's just, I just think that would go so much further towards, for instance, let's look at Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker's having an interesting season. He's shot the ball pretty well in spot up situations. He applies real rim pressure and pick and roll. He's one of the few, like early in the season, he was one of the rare bright spots for the Lakers in pick and roll because LeBron was being so passive trying to get downhill. Like he was just really getting his head of steam going towards the rim. Don't you like him better as a 2 than a 3? Like it's really that simple. Like I like it fundamentally with the geometry of the way those lineups work when he's battling with someone closer to his size, where now his athleticism is like the differentiator between him and that guy versus the thing that allows him to maybe hold his own sometimes against the 6'8" guy. That's where I fundamentally don't like the way that their roster is put together.